Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, it's blocked by James. Curry, one-on-one, Irving puts it up. It's good. Kyrie Irving from downtown. The three, steps back, crossover, puts up a three. Rebound James, second. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
Cleveland! This is for you!
27 games, 23 victories. Good day, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Block the Shot to Stop with Tim Daniel. I am Kevin Lynch, coming to you right after the Cavs 130-101 shellacking of the Brooklyn Nets. And Tim, you've been idle for as long as you're ever idle for. This is your first Cavs podcast in 9 days. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give you the floor, man. You give all the takes you want tonight, during the time you missed. Like, you take the floor.
Well, it's so funny because, I was out 9 days, although I was working on everything else I work on. My first year in 8 years, sans COVID, I missed the shootout. First time I didn't go in 8 years, man. So I tell you what, it's the only day I ever care about college basketball. It's the only day I've missed. Even if it didn't go my team's way, there's nothing like being in the arena that day. But yeah, that went on in my time away. And then they played three games while I was off. So I don't feel like I missed a whole lot of time, but I guess, 9 days is a lot of time to not talk about the league. And you and Sky obviously did an NBA Weekly in that time frame. That was really good.
Yep.
So that was a lot of fun to listen to. But man, going into tonight, so obviously you wonder if the rust is still there after Washington Friday, where the Cavs basically already said it tonight on the broadcast. They did what they had to do to win.
Correct.
And in this game, it was, Kev, I don't know what looked worse. I don't know if the Nets looked worse or the Nets jerseys looked worse. Those were not attractive uniforms. And I'm sure they have something to do with Brooklyn culture, and that's great. But, and I'm, we know I'm a very big jersey guy. Not for me. Not for me.
It was a tough look.
Yeah. I know resident New York Mets fan Donovan Mitchell enjoyed his trip to New York today. I had a lot of fun, but I thought that, I got a little anxious there at first because I thought the rust was there when Brooklyn comes out and starts the game on a 7-0 run. And then Cleveland kind of gets back into it a little bit, obviously gets a little back and forth. I think at one point they're down 16-12. And I felt like once it hit 16-12 was kind of when the Cavs just became the Cavs. And then I'm putting Iris down, so I'm kind of like looking at the score on the app or on the Apple Sports app where that's the play-by-play. I'm like, okay, sure, Garland. I'm like, this is cool. And next thing I know, it's like 74-40 at halftime. I'm like, oh my God. So I look at the Nets box score and I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. Man, shout outs to Cavs suffocating defense, but for guys like Jared Allen and Karis LeVert and Kenny Atkinson, who have plenty of experience playing in the Barclays Center for the home team, good for them tonight. I know Kenny's been back to Brooklyn since he was relieved of duties, obviously as an assistant for the Clippers and the Warriors. But seeing him be the head coach against the team that beats his former team who fired him, I'm sure it was something that I don't think he holds a grudge by any means. He doesn't seem like a grudge kind of guy, but I'm sure the competitor in him felt pretty good about tonight.
Well, yeah, when he's getting a technical when they're up 30 in the fourth quarter, that seemed a little personal. Kenny's not a huge technical guy, though. He's gotten a couple recently. So I was making notes on my phone in that first quarter as that run was happening, and I have all kinds of different notes. At one point, it was like a 25-3 run. At one time, it was 16-0. But encapsulating all of it, the Nets were up 12-7, as you said, or 12-5, as you said. Then the Cavs outscored them 32-5 the rest of the first quarter. That NBA is a league of runs. Seeing teams come back from a double-digit deficit is not uncommon. A 32-5 scoring period is pretty
rare.
Yes. Yeah. And it begs the question, and we'll get back to the Cavs in a second, but I got one question before we kind of go through the individual players. The Nets before tonight were better than people thought, like potential play-in team and everything.
Mhm.
Does this mean Dennis Schroeder is the best point guard in the league? Because they lost him and then they just fell apart.
I think the Nets tonight, Kevin, their goal, and probably for the rest of the year, was to be the best team possible at playing capture the flag.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you don't play. I know he's had a little bit of a renaissance this year, but like you don't play Ben Simmons 31 minutes and the top minute guy on your team if you're trying to seriously win in 2024.
Yeah.
They
have guys still, even since the Schroeder trade, they still have guys I really like.
Yeah.
I think Noah Clowney would be good on the Cavs as their third big. It's just some guy who can run the floor and kind of be like and be sit in the dunker spot. Not that I think they should trade for him, but they have, I like not D'Anthony Melton. What's his name?
Shake Milton.
Shake Milton. Yeah, played for the Sixers for a minute. Thank you. I like him. And I thought he looked pretty good in some of the games tonight as well. They have guys, and so Dennis Schroeder when he's locking up people in the perimeter next to Steph Curry for a little while now, it's going to look pretty fun. What a move!
Yeah, right. Well, the Nets, I think. Maybe this is what you're trying to say. They have a lot of like really solid complementary players.
Yes.
The problem is there's nobody on the Nets for them to complement.
Right. Yeah.
You get so they have great guys that are like your, fifth starter in the starting lineup or one of your first couple guys on the bench, like super valuable guys to have on your team in those regards. You just can't make a whole team out of those and expect to win the NBA.
Absolutely not.
So with that, we are a Cavs podcast. Let's turn it back to the Cavs. Who we're both closet Dennis Schroeder fans, not even in closet really, but had to call it out. I mean, the Cavs, one of the fun things about the Cavs tonight, I was looking, it was about middle of the second quarter. They had 55 points and no one was in double figures yet. So this wasn't like the last podcast you and I did, the Hornets game where Mobley just single-handedly went on onslaught.
Yeah.
This was one of my favorite Cavs games in a long time for a few reasons. One, exactly that, like they getting contributions from everywhere, super balanced attack, end up with like 7 guys in double figures, and even a couple guys that weren't in double figures, like our guy TJ Maxx. He had 5 assists. He only had 5 points, but he had 5 assists. I thought he had some really good minutes, and so not only that getting contributions from everywhere, but then just this was the first game in a little while that just showed that high level offensive efficiency that they showed so much at the beginning of the year. And, last few games, like at first they almost looked run down towards the end of a really heavy game stretch. Then that Wizards games, as you said, it looked like rust because they go from that to having 5 days off. And then tonight they look like the machine that they were for the first 3 weeks of the season offensively.
Yeah, and you mentioned, so when they went on that big run in the first quarter, it felt like once Darius Garland got comfortable with the pace of the game is when things kind of started to kind of turn the page. And I know he wasn't the best statistic player tonight, but he kind of is that guy. He is the igniter. And I felt like tonight when he kind of got going, everything kind of stepped up. You talked about just the consistent balance that the team has been when they're at their best is what they're doing. And so, Karis LeVert tonight, 19 points, second on the team, was awesome. Georges Niang tonight was a rebound away from a double-double.
Unbelievable. Can we talk about him for a minute?
Let's.
Georges Niang, we came into the season, I think rightfully so, and hyped it up a lot the first few weeks. Karis LeVert, front runner for 6th man of the year kind of thing, right?
Already said it tonight. Yeah.
Yes, and if he'd have been healthy the whole season, he's missed some games. He kind of looked a little bit rusty or still favoring his one leg in a few others. But tonight he looked like that kind of guy. But Georges Niang, like this guy, he's been one of the most valuable Cavs players and arguably I would say the most valuable bench player overall this year.
For sure.
Not only the contributions that he's making, but the fact that he is filling what was a hole. Like they don't have a third big man they put in the rotation. So he plays a lot of power forward minutes, plays a lot of guys that are either bigger, more athletic, or both than him.
Yeah.
And just continues to produce results that are almost mind boggling. And at some point, it's always like takes a while to believe something that maybe you didn't expect to happen. But at what point do we just say he has turned a corner as a player and found the right team and the right role and is just an incredibly valuable guy on this team?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, he is yet to miss a game since he's been a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers.
I think that's right.
And that's crazy in the NBA.
Right.
So yeah, man, like you said, like he is just like kind of in the perfect niche for who he is.
Mhm.
Maybe, you know, we've talked about the third big quite a bit, and maybe you want to kind of see some size there. But I think the thing that jumps out the most to me about him is there was that week or so, you know, those 2 Hawks games, obviously, when the whole team in general didn't play well,
Mhm.
but he slumped.
Yeah.
And he's just bounced back really well. I mean, I think that probably started with the Charlotte game, and obviously having the time off was probably beneficial to him. But I feel like he just kind of always finds a way to get back on track. He doesn't ever just let things kind of get out of proportion. He doesn't have these extensive long slumps. You can count on him
Mhm.
to really kind of do a lot of stuff. Like, I mean, I think we're at the point now where we probably know that it's, and I hate to say it because I like the player a lot, but I think we probably know now when Max Strus comes back, it's probably Dean Wade that loses minutes.
Yeah. So looking that way.
And so for George to kind of be like, look, I'm still your guy. You
Mhm.
can count on me to come in and knock some buckets down. But to be physical in the sense of like, yeah, I'm playing against Day'Ron Sharpe tonight. And Day'Ron Sharpe is definitely a much bigger player than me.
Yep.
I'm going to box him out and I'm going to get boards from him. And he did that tonight. And that was awesome. Also,
Yeah.
I really like Day'Ron Sharpe. I feel like the Nets are like the college basketball all-stars.
They are full of a team where you're like, wait, I recognize that name. Where do you go to college? Play that game. Yeah, and we'll turn it back to let me cap George's phenomenal again. If you look at his overall season numbers, his stats don't like jump out at you. They're fairly in line with what he's done previously, but I think he's doing it in a more prominent role, and he has come on. He's one of the guys on the Cavs, I think the most that his play has been upticking consistently all season. A lot of the other guys have been very good all season or fluctuating a little bit. I think Georges has pretty much been on a steady incline the whole season and just seems to keep getting better and better without missing any time, as you said. The only negative out of the game tonight, and you just mentioned it, the name is Dean Wade. I was glad that they kept him in with the closing lineup once they went to the kind of blowout lineup with some of the younger guys, JT Thor. Yeah. And I was kind of hoping they would try and run some offense for him to get him some shots or something. Cause for me, I think more than it has to be like a confidence between the ears issue with that guy. Like he's not like an all-star, but he should be a high level complimentary guy. They use him as a fifth starter, but he's probably most served as like one of your like main rotation guys off the bench or something, filling the role you need. But he is maybe the only guy, or at least the most prominent guy on the Cavs roster that's been a little disappointing from what you expected of him this year, particularly with his shooting and overall offense. So yeah, I agree with you. When Max comes back, his one of two things is going to happen. Either his minutes are going to get cut or he's going to have to start coming around a little bit offensively to kind of continue at, he's been pretty steady at around 20 minutes a game tonight, 23 tonight.
Yeah, and I do wonder, and I haven't seen anything to say this, and I'm not trying to just kind of speculate by any stretch. I guess I am. But I kind of wonder if he might still be bothered by that injury. I wonder if that's, because before he got hurt and he missed those 3 or 4 games, he looked really good. And he was kind of, like you said, he was the fifth starter, and you liked it because of his two-way ability. Mm-hmm. He's still shown the ability to be a good rebounder, even while he has been able to score. So he definitely still has value. And I just think that eventually there's going to be a point where they're going to have to count on him, and he's going to come through. He's that kind of guy. Like you said, it could be injury, it could be between the ears, but I'm not at the point where I understand that, when Max comes back, it's probably him. Yeah. But I don't think that means he's done with the Cavs.
No. I don't either. And first of all, you could be right about the still having some injury effects. I do want to state that I think it's a default thing in the NBA when a guy's playing below expectations to say he might have an injury. Like
That's fair.
100%
So
it's
fair.
a default thing. And then
We're doing it with LeBron for the first time ever this year.
Yeah, right. And I really enjoy and have for a long time listening to Ryan Russillo, and his response to that always is like, there's no magical healing power in the world to like the ball in your hands, because you see guys limping around the court, like can barely get back to the other end of the court. Then all of a sudden they have the ball and they make some sweet move and get to the hoop. Yeah. And so you could be right. Like from without knowing anything about potential injury, it seems like a confidence thing. And I say it's a confidence thing because of the free throw stuff.
Yes.
He's like a mid-70s career free throw shooter, and he's shooting 40% this year. And that, I don't know if there's really any injury other than a broken hand that would affect your free throw shooting
I agree.
that much. So I think it's that makes me lean towards it's more of just a confidence issue, a confidence and a rhythm issue. You know, when you're in and out of the lineup, like that certainly can be harder to get a rhythm. But everybody here likes Dean Wade. We do truly believe that he could be a very solid contributor. I hope what happens is we get Max back, his offense starts coming around, and he starts being a super eighth guy off the bench, eighth guy in the rotation guy, which I think it would be the perfect role for him, kind of floating between two forward spots wherever they need him at. With that, let's talk about like some of the other guys tonight. 7 guys, all 5 starters, plus LeVert and Niang that we mentioned, in double figures. Incredibly balanced. Nobody with more than 21, which is Mobley led him with 21. But just efficiency up and down the roster. Like Mitchell took 14 shots, which is below his average. No one else took more than 10. I mean, just it's so fun when it's like this, and everyone's contributing, everyone's scoring. Like they had 104 points in the first 3 quarters, and then didn't score quite as much in the fourth when it was out of the game was decided. But 104 points in 3 quarters off of like just fantastic shooting. Sorry, I had the shooting numbers here. Yeah, 53% field goals, 40.5% 3-pointers tonight. Made 25 out of 29 free throws. Just everything.
Take that every night.
Yeah, and now as I said, all 5 starters scored in double figures. Did one of them in particular pop out to you that you, I guess, wanted to talk about?
I mean, I always want to talk about Mobley, but I'll not take the low hanging fruit this time, and I'm gonna go to your island where you are the flag bearer and the president of the Isaac Okoro Island.
Yes.
Thought he was awesome tonight.
It might not be as lonely for a while here.
No, you're absolutely right. I don't really think it's lonely in general, but I think you're probably got to start looking at building some condos on Isaac Okoro Island.
I hope so.
Maybe some townhomes.
Luckily, I just moved out of Nashville where they're building condos on top of condos, so I'm well versed in it.
Yeah, you might have to look at some HOAs in that area.
For sure.
But I thought he was tremendous tonight. I thought that he was really good. I mean, he was kind of the guy who guarded DFS majority of the game, and DFS is like their biggest option offensively, and I thought he was really solid against him. But on the other side, offensively, I mean, you talked about this a couple weeks ago where I feel like it's in the NBA, it's so rare that you talk about a guy shooting as his second quality. Isaac Okoro is so good defensively. Is in the top 10 in the league in 3-point shooting.
Yep.
And we don't talk about his 3-point shooting first ever. It's always, oh man, he's guarding the toughest guy every night. And for him to kind of be in that draft that he's in, right? The Edwards, the LaMelo Balls, Tyrese Halliburton, guys like that, for him to kind of really carving a niche and being kind of one of the guys you can say like, hey, I'm adding on to the greatness of that draft has been really awesome, man. And I'm so pumped because he is a very, very likable player, the way he plays. Sure. I think if I have it correct, I do believe him and JT Thor may have been teammates at Auburn. If I have to look again. So that kind of makes this kind of cool too. But yeah, I thought Isaac Okoro tonight, just tremendous play.
I agree with you, and kind of going the other way from how we were talking about Dean Wade. I really want to see Okoro's minutes tick up. Like he 27 a game last year. He's at 21 this year. I understand everyone's a little bit down, but I think he should be a 25 plus game just not only how well he's playing, but how well he more than anybody else in the roster, even Karis LeVert, he complements the big four.
I agree.
Giving
Completely
them
agree.
the little bit of gaps that are within how outstanding those four guys are, the few things that collectively I guess they don't do as well. He fills those gaps as well as anybody else on the roster, and particularly defensively, under like really solid rebounder for really he's a guard, but they play him more as a swing.
Yeah.
And as you said, the 3-point shooting, he's up to after tonight about probably 49% free 3-point shooting. Like, why, if you have a guy who is an outstanding defender shooting 49% from three and guards wings when you don't have any other main guys guard the other team's best wing, like, to me, that's a guy that should be playing 25, maybe 30 plus minutes
Absolutely.
a night.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that, I mean, and he's certainly earned the spot that when Max comes back, this eventual whenever it is, that you can't cut him down. I
don't think so.
There's just no way you can with how he's playing for this team.
I don't think so. I think you're right about Dean Wade. I think Sam Merrill is a candidate for getting his minutes cut. I actually don't think I think like Tad Jerome, our beloved TJ Maxx, will stay about where his average is. There's been games he's been getting way up into the mid 20s and above. He traditionally plays about 14 to 16 minutes a game. He usually plays the first 7 or 8 minutes of the second quarter and fourth quarter. And I could see him staying in that kind of role. But
he's a ball handler too. So of course
I see a lot of Max's minutes coming from Dean Wade, Sam Merrill, and then like whoever the 10th or 11th guy is that occasionally gets minutes. A lot of times it's Craig Porter Jr., Jalen Tyson, guys like that, just like don't really get any minutes other than blowouts going forward. But no, I'm with you. I want to talk about of all those guys. I want to talk about Jared Allen because we highlighted him Friday night that it was one of his better scoring games in a long time. Like his scoring had declined quite a bit. Like from the first few weeks of the season through the next 4 weeks of the season recently. I mean, he was going from, I think I saw in his first like 11 or 12 games, he was averaging 17 points. In the most recent 12 games, he was averaging like barely 11. I think it was like 11.0 exactly. Now tonight he only had 12 and 8 and he only played 23 minutes, but incredibly efficient, 5 for 5, like was, when he did have opportunities, he was aggressive. I like that Garland. I feel like Garland is getting back to penetrating and looking for him a little bit more. Like he did a lot at the beginning of the season, and they got away from it a little bit. So I just thought, because I feel bad that I gave Jarrett a little, not Jarrett, but like just not just him personally, but just the fact that he was contributing less. I think that was kind of a team wide issue. The fact that even though the numbers weren't quite what they were Friday, I thought he was like incredibly solid tonight.
Yeah, 2 deflections too that led to steals. So I think that's a super underrated part of his game as well. I was going to highlight him as well, and so I'm glad you did. Really, the best 12 and 8 you can ask for in a game like this, and I think that's kind of 12 and 8s don't always look the exact same, right?
Right.
So the 12 and 8 they got from him tonight was tremendous and terrific for what they needed. You're right. I mean, him kind of just having that ability to not just kind of sit in the dunker spot, but kind of just hover in the area to kind of be ready for those Garland driving dishes, I think is so underrated. Just his ability to slide and just be there and have his hands ready. It's such a nice trait.
And he has always had good hands and good footwork and everything.
Yeah.
I think he has improved his touch, particularly with his left hand in the last season or two, to where he has a really nice, like even tonight, he had a left-handed hook shot that bounced on the rim softly a couple times and fell in, like something like that. Just to have that good of touch as a big man with your offhand is an incredible skill to have. And I think I only highlighted it because I thought there was the Jared Allen that the Cavs need and the Cavs could get was a lot more like the first few weeks than the most recent few weeks. And I think if the Cavs are going to be the best team, he's got to play 30 minutes. He's got to be in the 15, 16 plus points, double digit rebounds, and playing his, always solid defense protecting the rim. I think that's when they're, I think almost Jared Allen being at their best is an indicator for the team being at their best.
I completely agree because you know what you're getting from Mitchell and Mobley. You just
Yeah.
know that, you know, when they need to switch it on, they switch it on. But when Garland and Allen are being the Garland and Allen, we've seen them in big stretches this year.
Mhm.
This team is nearly unstoppable.
Yes. No, for sure. And yeah, I mean, such a fun game tonight. Like we could talk it to death, but honestly, like how much more can you say about a 30-point win where everything really seemed to go right? And I think this is one of those games that you almost wish you had a back-to-back playing again tomorrow or in a couple nights to like keep the rhythm. And unfortunately,
because I'm off Friday too.
Yeah, yes. So unfortunately, the Cavs got another 4 days off. Not unfortunately for them, just unfortunately for us because we don't know what to do with ourselves all these days without Cavs basketball. But they play this weekend against the Bucks. Bucks is Friday night. The Sixers is Saturday, I believe. I know it's those two this weekend. And they're going to be playing the Bucks coming off of their, and we're going to end with a little bit of talk about the NBA Cup championship. But the Bucks will be coming off of that, whether they win or lose the championship tomorrow night. It'll be the first game since then. So I feel like there's a possibility they might rest guys on Friday night. And yeah, I think this weekend is a really good opportunity for the Cavs to get another couple wins and start building momentum again, like they have so many times this season.
I agree. And like you said, they're probably going to rest guys. I wonder how much the Bucks took in account to what happened to the Lakers and Pacers last year when after the Cup.
They both tanked.
Yeah, they both really struggled for a couple of weeks there. So I'm really interested to see the dynamic of how that goes. And also, it's a team that's gotten hot. They've played really well for a couple of weeks now. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago on Weekly. But it's a team that's kind of putting it back together. It's still not a team I'm very high on. And I just cannot get over the coaching staff. I just feel like the coaching staff is going to find a way to cost them games. Because Giannis right now, with Giannis's efficiency numbers, he should be leaps and bounds the MVP candidate right now, number one.
Is the funny thing is Joker might be having his best season from a statistical standpoint and everything, but Giannis is right there. And those two guys have separated themselves from the rest of the league, in my opinion, as far as the production that they're putting up this year. And I mean, this has been a theme the few times we've talked about the Bucks together. I'm a little bit higher on you. I understand your concerns. There's a lot of concerns there, but like, give me Giannis and give me Dame Lillard looking pretty close to the Dame Lillard and I'll figure out the rest kind of thing is where I am. And
I thought they looked really good Saturday against Atlanta. I thought they played great. But it's after those two. It's, I think Chris Middleton's had some good nights since he came back, but I don't trust it. Brooke Lopez has been up and down. We've gone deep on their bench. So it's subpar.
Yeah.
And by the way, Doc Rivers is their head coach.
Oh, for Doc. But yeah, and we'll have some time to talk about Sixers. But since you're not on Friday night, any thoughts on I mean, the Sixers, the big news out of there is Jared McCain was just lost for the year, who's frankly, he's been a vibe. He's been the brightest spot in their pretty doomy season. I was looking, they're actually only 2 games back in the play-in, I think, when I looked a couple days ago. So, the play-in offers a lot of grace to kind of save your season, at least get a seat at the table come playoff time. But yeah, the Sixers, they, unlike the Bucks, I mean, we talked about maybe 3 weeks of the season, they had the worst 2 records in the league. The Bucks have, at the very least, love them or hate them or whatever you think their prospects are, they've righted the ship. They're now like a top 5 team in the East. And the Sixers really haven't. They've won a couple more games, but it's not any less of a mess than it has been there. And I think that's, barring anything, happening from an injury standpoint or needing to rest guys on the back-to-back, I feel like that game should be a high probability of a Cavs win.
Yeah, I did too. I did watch when the Sixers played the Bulls a couple weeks ago, and it was the first game that the big three played together, and I thought they looked really good. That was probably Embiid's best game of the season. The frustrating thing about Joel Embiid is that when he does play, he is insanely good and super gifted. It's just you don't see it enough. And so hope I want to be. You talked about this with Boston. And I feel the same way. I want to beat the Sixers when Paul George and Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey are on the floor. Yeah. And I think that the Cavs are certainly in a good place to do it. I think where the Cavs just have this advantage on these Milwaukee's and Philadelphia's, it's just they're and we see this all the time. We're seeing this with the Lakers all the time now, is that if you're athletic and long, then these older teams are going to have a lot of trouble with you. And I think that's like where I really like Cleveland in this sense, where I think the only teams I really think they're on the same level as the Cavs are Oklahoma City and Boston.
I agree. I agree with the sentiment. I would add in the fact that the Cavs have been so consistent and they're so deep in the rotation. The fact that they can play 10 guys, sometimes 11 guys without much of a fall off because they keep two of the big four in at all times. They have role players that have been such high quality this year. I think that's a big difference, is especially when you have back-to-backs and so many games when where they play in like 5 games in 8 nights and stuff like that. If you're going to win a lot of games and tough stretches like that, you have to get contributions from up and down the roster. And my guess is I'd have to look, but the Cavs have gotten more contributions from their entire roster than probably just about anybody in the NBA.
I would say that's fair. Yeah.
So with that, we can go ahead and wrap this one up. Before we do, what's your prediction for the NBA Cup tomorrow night?
I know I just kind of destroyed them, but I like the Bucks. I just like how Giannis is playing right now.
Yeah.
And the Oklahoma City doesn't have Chet still. And don't be wrong, we've talked about this in the past. I love Jalen Williams, but and Jalen Williams is unbelievable defensively. Probably one of the best players to guard Giannis, even with the size differential. But I just feel like the way Giannis is playing right now and what you're getting from Lillard through the cup, I just feel like it's a Bucks win.
I do too. I think I often default to the more experienced team in kind of championship situations like this. And the Bucks are, they have a lot of the core guys from their championship, 2-3 years ago. And the Thunder, as talented they are, they're still very young putting it together. I mean, you saw it in the playoffs last year. They were as talented as anybody in the West, and we're a little bit deer in the headlights-ish when the playoffs came on and everything. Now they might have learned from that, and they've been spectacular this year, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if they won. But if I had to pick, I would take the Bucks as well, with Giannis having a monster game.
Yeah, I think that's a fair sentiment. I want to say one quick thing before we get out of here. Want to make sure we give a quick shout out to Amani Bates making his return to the floor.
Yeah.
So he played Saturday for the Charge, his first game all year with his knee injury. Had 10 points. As we all know, Amani Bates is one of those guys who's not afraid to let it fly. So I don't know exactly what the statistical shooting numbers were. I did not see the box score, but I don't know how you feel, Kevin. I was a huge fan of his in high school, and I was very excited when he went to play for Penny Hardaway. Obviously, it did not work out the way any of us thought it would, but I want that kid to do well. I like that kid a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I do as well. And, one of the safer bets, no bet's completely safe, but one of the safer bets in the NBA is like betting on talent. And you see this all the time. Like Derek Lively is an example of a guy. He was like the number 1 player in his high school class. Then he went to Duke, and he was just like good, not great kind of thing. That's where he falls to like the middle of the first round or like late lottery. I think it was where Mavs picked him. And then it's been an incredible contributor. Like he's outperformed his draft position to date. And that happens a lot of times with guys that, they're like the number 1 player in high school. And then, I don't know, for whatever reason, like fall off a little bit in college or and their draft stock falls a little bit. And then before you know it, they get to the NBA and they, can kind of rediscover that talent that got them the rankings that they did. So I would not be surprised at all, if Emoni gets his feet under him, starts playing well, and then starts, getting rotation minutes in the NBA again soon.
Yeah, I hope so, man.
Yeah. All righty. Well, with that, we will go ahead and call it a night. Thanks again, everybody, for listening to the Block the Shot, the Stop. And as always,
go Cavs.